How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I'm going to go and do a review of this thing, the International Paystar 5600 TS. I wasn't sure whether to do this one or the P512, but I kind of feel I already know where I stand with the P512. It's pretty good for a non-all-wheel drive truck, but it's non-all-wheel drive. This one, there's a bit more mystery to it, a bit more to squeeze out of it and see what's going on. It's got the twin steer top engine. It goes up to S on the power, not quite S+, but close. I'm going to go with a high range gearbox. Mainly, I'm not sure what's going on with the rev caps recently, but high range tends to give you the most freedom as far as rev caps and everything go. It's got raised suspension. It raises it a little bit, nothing too crazy, but yeah, it's better than nothing. As for all the tyres, I mean, you basically got two sizes, 43 and 50 inch, which are not too bad. I mean, the Dolphin's got like 51 inch, the Tiger is about 53 inch maybe. Yeah, the twin steer though has got 63 inch tyres, like the biggest ones it can have. This has probably got slightly smaller tyres because it's got the 3 axles at the rear. They've yeah, had to shrink them down a bit. The tyre stats, I'm not sure if they've messed around with the physics. Yeah, I'm still going to go for the chained in the end. It says average, excellent, good, excellent. It says good in mud over excellent with the actual mud tyres. However, I still think it kind of seems to have the same stats as the mud tyres, and I tested it earlier in the mud and everything, and I don't really see any difference. Winches, I got the top winch. It's got a diff lock. I put the 2 snorkels on. Not too keen on the look of them. I'm not really bothered, but yeah, they let you go the deepest. That's what she said. And all-wheel drive as well. I got the upgrade for that, so it's got the all-wheel drive availability. These are the different add-ons. I mean, it's quite cool. It's got like the random longer fuel add-on. You can have the crane and semi-trailers. You can also have the crane, the sideboard bed, and the trailer. I'll show you that in a sec. So that's like the holy trinity as far as all the different add-ons and stuff for the truck. Yeah, it's also got the logging crane and the logging like semi-trailer kind of add-on thing. I put a little sun visor sort of thing on it. It actually does narrow the windscreen, so you may want to take that off at some point. I put the fog lights on. I put those ones on because it's got little lights at the side. As for these bumpers, the stock one is actually the best one in terms of like it stays nice and tucked in and it doesn't sit too low, but to be honest, I prefer the look of that, and it still sits as high as a stock bumper. It just sticks out a little more, but in the scheme of things it doesn't really matter. So yeah, strictly speaking, the stock is the best. As for exhaust, there's not many to choose from. I've only gone for that one in the end because it angles the smoke slightly out to the side. To be fair, this thing doesn't smoke a hell of a lot, so it doesn't really matter either way. Not many choice of alloys, but I don't really mind about any of that. And then, yeah, it's got all the normal colours. As for the custom ones, you got that, which I believe it was when I found it. Black and white, that one. I quite like that. I've got the green one and the red one. I'm going to go with the red one for a bit. I might change around through the night. That yellowish one reminds me a bit like the cat colours, though, so that's why I didn't quite go for it yet. Yeah, as for the look of it, I think it does look pretty cool. I like the fact that it's yeah, 5 axles, 10 wheels, twin front steer. It's not got any rear steer or anything, but its steering's pretty decent. Got walnut interior. Yeah, the view's all around. I can see out the back just fine. Can't really see my tyres out the mirror, but then when I look out the actual window, I can even see like just past to the left-hand side of the garage. So there's definitely good views looking out the back there. The horn is a bit, yeah, bit there for the size of the truck. I'd want something a bit meatier than that. Yeah, fire it up. It climbs up the rev range pretty quick on the dashboard, which, one odd thing with this truck, it doesn't seem to introduce the power very quickly. I'll get into it as the video goes, but yeah, it according to the dash, it revs pretty quickly. And it's definitely got a better turning circle than the twin steer. Like when I just turn around there, I didn't have to be careful of like hitting those concrete blocks or anything at the edge. Trailer wise, it can have basically every trailer. The only thing it hasn't got is a saddle high, so you can't have the saddle high trailers. I just parked this twin steer just to show you quickly, because obviously they're roughly similar kind of trucks. They've got the same engine. I mean, look at it. It's like a little midget compared to the twin steer. I didn't quite realise how much smaller than the twin steer it is. And yeah, again, like the twin steer's got the 63 inch tyres. So that's possibly some reason why it's not quite as fast and punchy as the twin steer. There's the crane, the sideboard, and the various trailers. Yeah, because if you imagine, like, this thing's a lot smaller, so it's just, yeah, I don't know, I used to run, do 100-metre sprint and that at school. I ran against other people in the country, and yeah, I'm 6 foot, I can run pretty quick. Like, a midget, no matter how healthy and well looked after a midget just wouldn't be able to outrun me. And it's the same with this. It's just, it's quite a lot smaller than the twin stair, and having 13-inch smaller tyres does make some difference. And I think that might be part of why it's not quite applying the power as much as you'd expect compared to the twin stair. Cutting through this mud, one thing I do like about this is it stays in high very nicely. I was wiggling around there. I purposely drove into the slightly deeper water to see if it'd stall or it'd just wheel spin in high range, and it did. But when I got out the other side, I put it in auto, and it just would not get out of first gear. Its first gear is the main one where it just doesn't seem to introduce. It's like it's giving you half power or something. Eventually, though, I got it into high gear. It goes into high gear very easily, even if you're only just into second gear, it fires up, which is pretty nice. And once I was in high gear, it flew up the hill. I even crashed into a rock and nearly stopped dead, but it carried on wheel spinning and took off again, which was pretty nice. Coming for a tree test, I was pretty happy with that, because considering how much smaller it is than the twin stair, I kind of figured it might knock 1 or 2 trees over. I wasn't too convinced it'd do all 3, but yeah, it did, which is pretty nice to know. I mean, as far as the whole weight of it goes, it doesn't feel like it's made of fresh air or anything. It's not the heaviest thing, but it's definitely got some kind of weight to it. And it did not too bad through there. I usually go round that tree, and a lot of things start wading there, but when you drop it down into low range with the diffs on, I mean, the good thing overall with the truck is you've always got that to fall back on. Low range with the diffs on, it can crawl, even if it's a bit slow. It can get through most things, especially the fact that it has got 5 axles and 10 wheels, so it's got a lot of points of grip to try and claw its way through. And yeah, as for going along there, I mean, with the rocks, it's bouncing over them, no problem. Every now and then I pick up the odd 1 damage here and there, but nothing too special. About normal, really, to be honest. It's not really been a particular pain for kind of getting stuck on rocks and then that's it, just sits there. It's particularly the rear 3 axles, they've got quite a nice bit of flex to them with the suspension and everything, so they do kind of seesaw and rock their way over various boulders and all sorts pretty well. And yeah, even considering the tyres are smaller, it's got a decent enough pace. And again, because it's so easy to go into high range, and it's pretty good at staying in high range, even when you get slowed down and stuff, it's overall it makes for a fairly easy drive. Like I said, I mean, that's the big thing with this. You want to get to high range as quick as possible. That's when it feels like high range, just particularly in the high range gearbox, it doesn't seem to offer have any rev caps or anything. It just gives you the full amount of power, lets you go flying up to speed, and obviously you can stall it at the low end. But yeah, that's why I've always liked high gear. It just feels like it gives you everything the engine's got, which is what I'm looking for. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to stick to. I mean, I'll still be testing the fine-tuned gearbox and all sorts, but for this review I wanted to stick to the high range. Smashed the anti-terrace barricade, I did alright on that. Crawling through this mud, again, because it's shorter and smaller and everything than the twin stair, it's sort of like all this river section is kind of deeper to it by comparison. That current there gets a bit strong. Started to push the nose a little bit, but not that bad. Like, it fought back. The good thing is it's got 2 lots of axles at the front, so it planted itself well enough that the current didn't start whipping it away. But yeah, I mean, again, low range diffs on. I don't think it'd ever get stuck through there. It feels comfortable enough doing what it's doing now. It's certainly not fast about it, but yeah, as long as it does get over there, it's not a major problem. And you see there, when I come out of here, go back into auto, and the thing's just pretty bloody gutless trying to climb through the gears, so I just ram it in high range as soon as I can, smashing another barricade out of the way. But yeah, it still sometimes takes a few seconds for it to build up into high range, but once you go in, it kind of motors along quite nicely. So next up is the yeah, doing a bit of snow test and barrier and everything. That Fleet Star, I think it was back there, that was like map bait when they update the game, just to see if it'll steal the trailer or the truck. I'll risk it with that. It's just a stock one, so I'll only lose about 30 grand if it does. Yeah, you can see the axles there, they all kind of seesaw their way over the barriers pretty well, and it did actually get over the barrier, didn't catch its front bumper, Didn't quite catch the fuel tank and everything just behind the front axles. And even climbing over here, not bad all things considered, because quite a few trucks can struggle with that. It was nearly going to tip, but fortunately I kind of got over to this barrier in time and it sort of saved it. And as for the weight characteristics, I believe there is weight in the roof, a bit like the Voron D and that. It might be quite centred, but there's definitely weight somewhere high up, and I'll get to that in pretty soon. Yeah, got over those barriers though very nicely, and that was even in like the slightly deeper section where it still climbed its way over. I'm in high range now going across the snow, so yeah, I mean, it's not bad in the snow, to be honest. And somebody was telling me the other day that the boar is pretty good in the snow, so I mean, maybe with this game, if they've tweaked the physics, they might have toned it down with the snow a bit, but maybe they've kept the mud a little bit more trollish. But yeah, this thing's certainly doing alright in the snow. If the bore's the same, then I'll have to try the P512. And considering the length of the truck, it climbed up those rocks pretty well. It stayed balanced while it was on there. I got off the other side without tipping to the side or anything like that. It didn't dig in its front bumper and get stuck or anything, so there's a little section between the two lots of axles that you could beach, but it didn't. So yeah, again, I mean, I'm not going to expect it to be some serious mountain goat because of the length of it and everything, but it was doing well enough. You'll see now that I jump up these pipes, as soon as I get to the middle, it just starts tipping over, and that's where I think there's a big concentrated amount of weight in the roof, hence why it's just rolled straight upside down. That roof's trying to, yeah, become the lowest point. So I attempted this 4, 5, 6 times. This is just, I edited the other ones out. So it started to tip there, I flung the winch out, but because there's only one winch point at the front in the middle, it wasn't enough of an angle, like it couldn't stop it fully tipping. Fortunately, it was just enough to where the engine would fire up. And again, the only other 2 winch points are in the chassis in the middle there, and one at the back, but they're quite narrow winch points overall, which can potentially make it a bit more awkward to flip. But once I did flip it back like that, it kind of, now it's sat with its front axles on the floor, it's sort of settled enough that it didn't try and just flop over. But yeah, I'm pretty convinced there's some dense weight like high up in the roof on it. You can see there a quick bit of interior. You can see the sun visor thing, or whatever they're called, that go out like outside over the top of the window. It definitely narrows your view a little bit. You sit quite far back in the truck. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but I just mean you're not pressed up against the window, so you kind of, it does narrow your view a little bit over the top of the dashboard, and then yeah, with that sun visor thing. Going through there though, motored through there, no problems. As it is fairly small and sits lower and everything, it doesn't have as many truck tree branches to fight its way through, so it did pretty well. I was just doing a little checking of like the balancing. It was balancing around where that fuel tank is, but after you get past the front axles, there's a set of stairs behind one of the axles, and then there's that fuel tank, and it goes a bit wobbly and all the rest of it, but there's definitely a fair amount of weight at the front, and I'll show you soon why that. It's not the end of the world, but you'll see what I mean. I'll save it for a minute. It's easy to explain when the footage is there. So next one is yeah, the cargo test, and that's one thing I do like about this truck, that you can still have various add-ons. I can have the crane. There's plenty of length. Yeah, that's what she said. Yeah, so it can fit all the trailer and everything. Turning circle wise, not amazing compared to a lot of the trucks, but again, it's 1.5, 2 times longer than a lot of trucks, so I kind of just take that as part of the characteristic of the truck. It's not the end of the world. The steering in and of itself, I think, is nice. I mean, it goes around this corner, no issues. If anything, I could have turned later and gone a bit wider there, but yeah, it's certainly enough that the steering isn't an issue, and at least that it has got the twin steering axles. Yeah, once you full lock it, the nose starts swinging across quick enough. So cutting across here, and I had no idea. I thought I could go good, could go bad. We'll see. I kept it in high as long as I can. You can see though, it's not moaning about stalling or anything, but once you see mud flicking up in the air, that's the game's way of telling you it's not giving you grip anymore, it's just going to make you dig further into the map. So yeah, dropped it down, low range with the diffs on. And as you can see, it's handling it pretty well. It's still cutting through there. Again, it's not rapid. I could put the off-road or the fine-tune gearbox in, so I'd have high-low, but yeah, again, the high range is so handy in this that I'd rather keep the high range gearbox for that. I can handle going this slow through the boggier bits. I'd rather make up the time, yeah, with the faster high range. Goes along there now. let the steering off. Just missed that trailer by an inch or so. I managed to get into high there, but then as I swerved to miss that trailer, I kind of lost my speed again. And again, now I'm stuck in first gear. And it just, you can hear it gives you hardly any of the power. Eventually though, tap in L1 and that. Got it to jump up to second, so I dropped it back in high. And now it's in high, motoring along here, which is actually pretty good, because I've taken a lot of trucks through here, in case you can't tell, from my ever-growing trailer store. But yeah, a lot of trucks struggle when they've got a trailer with cargo through here. They struggle to stay in high gear, so the fact that this is pretty nice. Went to park it up. That boat trailer was had an invisible hitbox around it, so it was like a lot bigger than. Yeah, I don't know. I was like climbing up on something invisible. Anyway, motoring through the water. I mean, again, it's in high. It was motoring along through there pretty nicely. This thing seems pretty good at wading through water, considering it is fairly small compared to like the twin steer. But again, at least it's small. It can squeeze through there, no problem. Its axles are narrow enough that it can make its way through. And even now in the high range, again, that's probably like the biggest benefit of this truck. Is even when you go pretty slow, it'd rather wheel spin than just cut out and sort of die in high range. Which is weird in a way, because that implies that there's instant power there ready, but then again in first gear you kind of have the opposite feel to that, but whatever, that might be something with a coding. Yeah, even when it goes slower you can just keep squeezing the throttle and it keeps going, it'll wheel spin, and eventually when you get a bit more grip it'll fire back up to speed. So yeah, again, bit of interior view. The bonnet and everything didn't really block the view. As I said though, as I'm going downhill, that sun visor at the top does make the view a bit narrow, so maybe I'll remove that in the long run. And yeah, slowed down. Looking out the windows, I can see all my tyres again, but I was able to stick it back in high range. As I was going around that corner, I sort of said to myself, I'm going to oversteer this corner and crash into that post, and then I did. I mean, it's fully my fault, but I'm just sort of saying, I almost like predicted it and then subconsciously made it happen. Like I knew while I was doing it that I was steering for too long, but I don't know, I just confused myself and crashed into the post. It's all good. Yeah, cutting through there, it took a little hit on the way, but it didn't catch its bumper and stop or anything, and again it was able to stay in high range. Cutting through here with the mud, this is what I mean, I've been testing the chained versus the muds, and I honestly can't really see any difference. I just think that the chained are still them better because they've got chains on, and it's good for biting up the edges of rocks and that. It's good for climbing the rocks and the barriers, and it's also good on the icy roads. And I use chained in a lot of the review videos, so I like to keep it all fairly even so they're easier to compare truck to truck. But yeah, I did specifically give both tyres a test before this video, and they both seem the same to me. I could cut through mud places in high in both, and etc. They'd get stuck in similar places. Cutting across here, pretty happy with the results, because there is a lot of like little ledges there with the rocks. And again, as this thing hasn't got tyres as big as the twin steer, I thought it might start catching its chin, but it didn't. It sits tall enough that it jumped over everything. Took the odd little hit of damage, but nothing special. And yeah, motored along there pretty comfortably, to be honest. I'd happily cut across there again. And even here in the snow, you can see now I'm staying in the high range. I hit the little deeper bits of snow where it slows me down, but it's able to maintain the revs in the high range. It does a bit more wheel spinning, kind of jiggle it around a bit, and yeah, find the shallower patches of snow, and it kind of takes off again. So overall, for flying around some of the maps, it's I don't think it's too bad. And that's kind of why I wanted to test this one tonight, because I've been playing around with this for the last few days. I've done a bit of logging with it and just driving around the maps and whatever, and yeah, sometimes I kind of like the feel of it, other times it's a bit like, well, what's wrong with it? So that's why I kind of chose it in the end over the P512, just to put it through its paces and see what's going on. And yeah, now I've kind of generally noticed that first gear auto for some reason is gutless. And that's, I think, the biggest problem. The first gear auto isn't firing you up through that rev range into second gear, and then you're building your momentum up. It's like it's yeah, the first gear is too weak to fire you up and gather momentum, which is a bit odd. Cutting through this like Devil's Mud section on White Valley. Is it White Valley? No, it's not White Valley. Northport still. Yeah, again, I didn't have amazingly high hopes. I was thinking maybe like it has got 10 wheels, so it's plenty of points for grip, but again, 50-inch wheels, the thing itself is relatively small, so it's kind of, yeah, it feels that mud situation going on a lot more than some of the bigger trucks. I winched it to the edge. Once it drove along the edge, it was clawing down there like comfortably enough, so again, for the most part, you can just skirt along the edge of deep mud sections and you'll get away with it. So it's climbing up here pretty nice up to now. You'll start to see though where as I tilt, the weight in the roof, as soon as that gets over the side of the tyres, that's it, it just pulls your head over and it's gone. So, I brought the Tayga and the loaf. I like to stick, I've used the Tayga to rescue a lot of stuff in these mountains in the other review videos. I bring a loaf as a backup to the Tayga, which you'll possibly see be of a benefit pretty soon. Yeah, you'll see when I'm climbing up here, this is where like a bit more weight at the back would be nice, because basically as soon as your front axles clear like a bit where you can beach, there's enough weight in the front that it seesaws the back end up, so now there's only one of the 3 axles touching. Fortunately, that Tayga was close enough, I could just use the winch, scoot my back end round, and I got away with that. And again, I mean, this thing, it's a big long truck with plenty of axles. It really isn't suited to go skipping around the mountains and climbing over little ledges and edges and bumps and everything, so with that in mind, I think it was doing pretty nicely now, really. Apologies, I think there might have been a little glitch in the footage there, but yeah, it's kind of finding the little dips and bumps. It's the suspension on the wheels are doing their job and they're kind of wiggling over it. It's still got enough grip and everything to keep going, so all things considered, I'd say that went pretty well. See, again, I'm pretty convinced there is weight in the roof. As soon as that got over the tyres, it took me with it. And yeah, we got, what was it, 1 3/4 rolls or something. So, sending the Tayga in. Oh no. We rolled it, and of course, that's why you get yourself a goddamn horse or a vehicle. You see, that saves me. This, again, this is where I learned the usefulness of a loaf. Because when I was making videos, like, if that happened to me before and I didn't have a loaf, I'd have to recover the Tayga, then drive it back. And that was like another 10 minutes of just messing around. Yeah, sent in the loaf to do this thing. I was trying to pull it the other way up, but it was just sliding along on its side until it butted up against some trees. So if it's moved position since you last seen it, that's why I just, instead of sitting the footage here, there of just, yeah, nothing's going on, nothing's being completed. And again, the loaf flipped it. I stayed there with the loaf. He caught it, stop it rolling more. It was close, but jiggled his way back to its wheels. Sadly though, I switched to the Paystar, and it just immediately rolled to its side, so send the loaf up, wedge him behind a tree, get it back to its wheels, and we're off again. I wasn't sure, I thought it might try and tip as I turn around here. Overall, it didn't go too badly. I got a bit confused. I was just holding L1, smacking all the buttons until I got both the all-wheel drive and diff locks on. See, there as well, it wasn't far off though. I'd still say there's probably enough weight low down, so it's probably not as bad as like the Royal. The Royal almost feels like there's weight in the roof, and there's not a lot even in low down in the vehicle, so that really is like top heavy. This, it may just be that there's weight all along low down with the chassis, but then there is also weight high up only at the front because of the cab. And yeah, it seems to, again, when I was jumping that wall in Northport, it was, well, again, you can see there, in fact. I mean, so it did climb up that hill, but then when I got towards the top and I leant too far over, yeah, the roof took it with it. As you see then when I bounced as well, when it was like free floating in the air, it span round. It's trying to get the roof to the floor before the rest of the truck is kind of what it feels like. So next up though, we're into the Quarry. And yeah, I've stuck a crane on this time for no apparent reason, just because I can. Loaf, look at him, he's having a good old time. And yeah, I believe you can fit like the van body add-on and then the semi-trailer. I don't know how close they'll all butt up. Some of the trailers stick out a little bit more than others. But still, there's definitely plenty of room. I could probably even stick a loaf behind that crane and sit him on the chassis. But yeah, all things considered, this thing clawed through there alright. I mean, worst case, again, drop it down, low range diffs on, and it claws its way through there, no problem. We've got the loaf, which again, that's what I did with a lot of the other truck tests. I do release the loaf in a second to go down here. I was tempted to bring it with me, but again, I usually release the loaf there. And we're on the way. No real issues going around it. To be fair, once it is on its wheels, it doesn't seem that bad for tipping, so like I said, maybe there is weight low down at the front and everything as well. It's just because I suppose the truck's a bit like an L shape. There's only weight higher up at the front. Got down there, no problem. I certainly had to kind of turn into it because I didn't want to roll, but it didn't really catch its bumper or anything like that. I mean, look at this place. Some people. I mean, motors through there, no issues. And then while I was going through, I thought, sod it, bang two of them in, keep it pinned, fingers crossed. And it motored all through that section very nicely. And that's what I mean. There's certain times where it's like kind of quite nice how well it does. But then it eventually ran out of power up there, which, if anything, you'd think if it made it as far as it did, it would have been fine by that point. So before I go up here, I've got to put my my mobile winch loaf there. I had a feeling that this might tip as I'm trying to turn from like the angle I am now to straight up the quarry hill. I thought there's a chance it could tip over. That's why I got the loaf there ready just in case. However, I got enough angle on it to where the trailer's like now helping me not tip over as well, and it yeah, so we got to the point where I can now start driving up here. It's going to start doing a wheelie really at the front, so it's down to those back 3 axles. And you can see though, it just cuts the power on particularly the front most axle of the 3 rears. That's kind of just got no power. The middle one's now wheel spinning, that's not got a lot of weight on it. So again, that's why you get yourself a goddamn horse of a vehicle. They make a pretty good pair. Yeah, stuck the loaf up there on his little loaf ledge. I took a little bit more of a run up, and after I drove over that first like bump where I initially got caught, because I'd already put tyre tracks through there, it was a bit of a cleaner run the second time, so I actually was able to get the wheels over that first hill. But yeah, it was struggling getting up this, so I just stuck a winch on the loaf quickly just to help keep my momentum, and it was enough. And yeah, the trailer as well, that got a little bit hooked on the quarry, but as I reversed it down, I just cut that little bit of footage out because again, I was trying to get this video under 40 minutes, and yeah, it just again it kind of smoothed out the sharpness of that bump. So it managed to claw its way up there. I have to say, it's definitely a bit of a thirsty beast. I mentioned it the other day, but you can quite often see the fuel go up into like, it's in the 20s a lot. I've seen it go up into the 30s as well, which the Navistar does that. There might be 1 or 2 others, but not many. So it's definitely a bit of a heavy drinker. So again, send the loaf up into the little loaf hole. I had a feeling that this thing would probably need help at some point, so it's just, yeah, the inevitable. Send in the horse, and he solves all your problems. But again, low range diffs on, that's about as good as you're going to get. Especially if you go in auto, the fact that the first gear auto seems pretty gutless, but you also then don't get to have your diff locks on, so I think this is the best. Now though, there's just, that's it, it's run out of power, so I don't think in this situation, if I had, say, the off-road and the high low, I don't think it'd make a lot of difference. I was pretty certain from how it behaved on the 2 quarry hills. A lot of trucks can drive up the 2 quarry hills no problem, and they still get stuck here, so yeah. But again, stuck a winch on the loaf. That got me far enough up the hill that I could now just fling a winch out to that tree, which, if I was just doing this as part of a mission, this is what I would do, is take a loaf with me, and yeah, you set him ahead like a little mobile winch point, and he helps you out. That's why everyone needs to get themselves a loaf. Driving along there, you can see now again I'm tapping L1 trying to get it. It couldn't even get into 2nd gear going along there. I eventually got it just before the end, which now I can crank it straight into high range. Drop the hammer down here and see what happens when we jump off here. Jumps off there pretty nicely. That trailer got flicked to the side though, which didn't really help, and as I landed, It got me, took me with it. Pretty good crash though. Do enjoy rallying trucks down the quarry. So, sending the loaf, he's going up to the top diving board. He's feeling brave. See, he just climbs up all kinds of things. That rock is bigger than him, and he's up it, he's gone. Goes for the dive. Damn professional. Little roll, little handstand. Showing off now pretty much. And there you go. Fire the engine up. That's what you get when you get yourself a loaf. The reassurance that he will make it. So, I'll try and figure out how to flip this thing. Right now, I was like, oh no. This could be a biggie for the loaf. Well, the minute I was looking, I was thinking, well, good thing is I'm allowed to remove the cargo with the loaf, which is about time. It's goddamn professional, he's earned it. Yeah, remove the cargo. Get that trailer out of the way, because that was butting up against the nose of the Paystar. And we'll try again. Again, though, the winch points are just not very good on this truck. Like, there's one central winch point in the middle. I like central front winch points, but it'd be nice if it just had 3 winch points at the front, if it had a central one and then one either side. And again, the chassis itself is fairly narrow, so even though there is winch points in the middle, it's you're not getting a lot of leverage from the centre point. But it's dragging the truck towards me. I think it'd start tipping a bit now, but because the trailer's at too much of an angle, I need really the trailer to be like completely straight. Yeah, it's obviously it's not going to flip my way with the trailer at that angle, so drop it in reverse. A tiny little glitch there, apologies for that, but the loaf rams it up onto its side. And then, yeah, basically I cut a little bit out, but I shoved the nose of the Paystar a bit forward just so it was more in line with the trailer, and it slid down the hill a little bit. Stuck a winch on, give it some welly. Job's a good one. Goddamn horse of a vehicle. So next up is the ice test. I'm on Lake Cobd at the minute. And yeah, there is a decent amount of weight overall with the truck, so I thought maybe if you're on the ice it's got a lot of tyres to spread the weight out, but I think it's just heavy enough that it doesn't really matter. It's still going to break the first axle through and then the second will follow, etc, etc. However, even considering it's got 50-inch tyres, which is fairly small when it comes to climbing through that ice, it was enough. And I have got the stock bumper on. Oh yeah, sorry, that's what I forgot to mention. You know when I was jumping over that wall in Northport, I had that bumper on that I said I prefer the look of. That was sticking out so much, it was bumping on the wall a bit, and it was making it a little bit more difficult to jump over the wall. That's when I switched back to the stock bumper, which sits more flush, and then I just left that on since. So yeah, I mean, I suppose in that sense I did find a situation where the stock bumper literally was the best one. It's the most compact and tucked away. But yeah, you can see, I mean, it's not absolutely just sailing across there. I kind of cut through the first time. The second one I mainly went through with low range of the diffs on. This one I tried to get as far across as I could in high range, but not all the way, so I had to drop it into low range with the diffs on. But yeah, 3 out of 3 it was able to cross there, so certainly doesn't mean it's going to get like through every single time, but that's certainly not a bad start. And I mean, now I was just flooring it, trying to get it into 8th, because I'm going to go and try the Jeff Special. And yeah, it's really not keen on pulling through the gears. Like the twin steer is kind of the opposite in that way. That thing absolutely loves powering through the gears, and it's climbing the gears pretty nicely. I think we did get it into 8th eventually. I was just getting past them snowy bits, turn the all-wheel drive off, bang it into high range. You can hear the little lull in the engine. It thought about it, but there just wasn't enough there to... I mean, this has a lot of axles that it has to light up in order for the Jeff Special to work, so... yeah, I was one of them. I was like, it might work, it might not. I tried it, and it didn't. And it is on the ice as well. That seems to be the best chance of getting it going. This is a quick one on flooded foothills. I cut a few of the vehicles. I mean, look, this thing's motoring through there. It stayed in high, and it actually gripped very well. It's one of the best things I've ever seen cut through there. And even on this super mud, this side, it's going better, which there's a possibility, if they have tweaked the physics, maybe that's related to that, I don't know. So, but regardless, this truck felt pretty good driving through there. Even here as well, I used to go over to the left there, and you tip quite a lot and it's pretty boggy in that section. You're best off it almost doing what I just did there, steering more into the river and cutting around that way. It's a bit flatter. Yeah, again, it stayed in high range, which I like because it gives me the option that I can just keep it pinned. And when it found more grip, it got back up to speed. And then even jumping through this is like giant pothole. Almost stopped, but it still didn't stall in high range. It fired back up, and yeah, I was off again. So just a little later on, I was cutting through another river, but you can see it's pretty comfortable at wading through them. So in that sense, snow it's been pretty good in. Yeah, rivers it's been pretty good in. Mud, a bit hit and miss. Some mud it's been pretty decent in. Others it slows it down. I was swinging around there, seeing there's a little bit of logging footage. Yeah, the logs started to tip, but this thing didn't absolutely kind of immediately agree with the logs and go, yep, let's tip. It sort of fought it. I did steer back out of it, so if I'd maybe kept it full lock, I could have rolled it. But there was enough time for me to, yeah, do the opposite lock, catch it, and so it's not a complete tipping machine by any means. It's just once you're already tipped quite far over, there does appear to be weight up in the roof that then the last little bit it kind of does encourage itself. But yeah, this thing it's pulling these logs. It's the long logs. I assume they must count as some pretty heavy cargo in this game, considering it's only one chunk of cargo. But yeah, I quite like this setup, and this is one of the few trucks that can have that logging crane and this long log setup. So that's pretty cool as well. And yeah, you can see there, you can remove the logs like cargo. So I was flying down the runway. I can't remember if I tried the jet special, but I was just seeing how quick it hauled its way up to 8th gear. It's a little view of the interior. Like I say, you sit quite far back in the cab, so you can definitely tell. Go for a jump off there. There's a floating trailer. And yeah, again, you can see I landed. It could have gone, if it was only weighted low down, it probably would have landed on its wheels, but the roof helped encourage it. So bring a loaf with us, give that a good little yeet off the cliff. And again, it lands at the bottom, it rolls over to its side pretty immediately. Jump in the horse. You see, however, I don't know how he does it, but he stayed, like, enough over that his engine fired up. Fling a winch out and we're saved in seconds. So, we'll see, how can the loaf do at this thing, which, like I said, very narrow winch points, but I was doing it along the beach on purpose. I was waiting to get a little rock hooked on the tyre. Then he digs in, job done, mere seconds. And you can see from the first time I jumped down there, this thing tipped to its side, I had to recover it and go again. And that's why I had to do sometimes 5 or 10 times making other videos. But this time, the second time, I bring the loaf with me, and we're rescued. So this is a bit of a drowning test driving in. I mean, again, this thing sits fairly short and it's fairly small compared to a lot of other trucks, so it ain't going to be deep sea diving. It's not bad as a submarine truck. The snorkels are pretty close to the roof, so it's kind of a 3/4 submarine truck, but I just mean, again, because it's fairly small, it's the P16, for example, would be able to go a lot deeper before that snorkel's feeling it. So it reversed out the water, no issues. Fixed the engine with a loaf, and then we'll go for like a proper drowning test, just see how much damage and that the engine takes. Taken some pretty big hits already. Not bad engine health though, and then took a 70 hit, but it stalled it, and that's it. Which, yeah, that's not the furthest I've been in the river. Like I said, the P16 would probably just about still have its snorkel out. And yeah, I mean, that's about it really. Overall, I do quite like it, to be honest. It's probably one of my favourite of the 3 new trucks. The P512 is probably in second for me, and then the Boar. All 3, they're not crap, but they're not great. They all sit like average to maybe a bit above average. Yeah, I like how it sits in high gear very easily. I don't like the lack of power in first gear, but maybe they've messed some up, adding the fine tune or whatever. Maybe they'll patch that and sort that out. I won't hold my breath because they don't seem to patch a lot of things they break, but you never know. Yeah, I mean, that's about it. Price-wise, 185 odd when it's fully done up. Look at it in here, it was about 126 stock, so not cheap, but I don't really mind by now. I'd say it's worth it, fully kitted up. It's better than the Derry 4520, and it's slightly cheaper, so yeah, it's worth getting and giving it a go. But anyway, that's about it for today though. Hope you enjoyed, I hope that helps. Thanks for watching, thanks to my Patreon members, and I'll be back soon.